Hi everybody, it's Ashley. Welcome back to my channel, and today I am going to be going over my November wrap-up, and I am so happy for this wrap-up. Despite some personal tragedies happening in my life this month, I managed to read 9.5 books, and I am going to go ahead and talk about that one that's unfinished, just to get it out there, because I did read quite a bit of it. I just did not finish it, and I don't know if I'm going to finish it. We'll talk more about that here in a minute. So I had a very interesting mix of books this month. I had fantasy, I had romance, I had horror, I had a little bit of everything, it felt like, and I haven't done that in a long time, and I was just very happy that I had that mix going on. I've missed doing that. I want to do that some more. It's a goal for next year to be more versatile in like any given month instead of getting too wrapped up in one genre. And I'm so happy for this because it was so exciting to me to be going back to that place. And yes, there are some rereads in here, but they were necessary rereads, and we will be getting to that. So I'm just going to jump right on into the books. The first book that I read this month, and if you guys follow me, then you have already seen the review for this, and that is The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. This is my least favorite book of the year. I thought this was horrible. It was garbage. It was trash. And I am not going to go too heavily into the reasons why, because I already have a very long book review for this up, which I will link down below if you want to hear more about my thoughts on why I dislike this so much. But basically what this is about is a woman named Casey Fletcher, who is a retired actress, and she has kind of gone on a drinking binge following the death of her husband, and she gets banished to this family home out on this lake. And this particular lake area has these fancy houses where rich, affluent families, like mostly celebrities, tend to summer at. And she develops this obsession with her neighbor across the lake named Catherine, and she believes that Catherine's husband has murdered her. I was very let down by this because I really thought that I was going to enjoy it more. The premise sounded very good. It reminded me a lot of The Woman in the Window, and that one I did like. And I was just expecting so much more out of this, and it went into a completely crazy, derisive direction that I did not agree with. And if you watch my review, you will know what I am talking about. But this was a major letdown for me, and I don't think I'm alone on that. I have seen a lot of one-star reviews for this book. I'm honestly not even sure why I did not DNF it. I think I just really, really wanted to give it a chance, and I kept hoping that it would get better, and it didn't. It just got worse and worse and worse. So this one was a letdown, but everything else that I read for the month kind of made up for it, so I'm not too disappointed in the way my month turned out just because of this one alone. The next book that I read this month was part of my 3-thriller vlog, which I will link down below for you. But this was The Family Game by Catherine Steadman. This was a 4-star read, and I really enjoyed this. I'd never read a Catherine Steadman before, but I really, really enjoyed this book. So I will be sure to link the vlog for you, and I will also link the review for this specific book by itself. So in The Family Game, we are following Harriet, and Harriet is meeting her future in-laws for the very first time, and they are this rich, affluent family, and she doesn't need their money. She has her own money. She's a successful author, but when she meets them, her father-in-law gives her a tape, and he tells her that it's an idea for a book that he has come up with, and he wants her opinion on it. And she doesn't think too much of this at first because she is a writer, and she's thinking that he just wants help getting started in the industry or whatever. But when she listens to this tape, she notices there are a lot of similarities between the characters of the book and the people in the actual family, and she starts to think that this might not just be an idea for a book, it may actually be the confession to a murder, and she's trying to figure out if this is something that has actually happened or if it is a book idea. It's a very, very interesting premise. I enjoyed it a lot. I had a lot of fun reading this. It was a little slow in the beginning, so it might take you a little bit to get there, but even in the slow parts, like, I was enjoying the characters and the interactions and everything. It's like I was still interested. I just wasn't really sure what the mystery was. But once she gets the tape, everything just kind of takes off, and I really, really enjoyed it. The intensity just kept building, and it was a whole lot of fun. I want to read more Catherine Steadman, so if you have any suggestions, please leave them down in the comments below, because I had so much fun with this, and I want to see if anything else that she writes is the roller coaster that this one was, because it was like being at an amusement park. It was awesome. The next book that I read this month was probably my biggest surprise. I didn't expect to like it at all, and this was The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. If you guys have followed me for a while, you know that I kind of have an underwhelming relationship with Lucy Foley books, particularly The Hunting Party. After I read that book, I had kind of made a decision that I was done with Lucy Foley, but I have a personal rule that I have to give an author at least 3 tries before I decide that I'm not going to read them at all. So, because every author has off moments, you're not going to love everything that every single person puts out. So I like to try at least 3 books, and The Hunting Party was only my second one. So this was the third. And I was dreading this with every fiber of my being. I really thought that I was going to hate it, but I didn't. I enjoyed it quite a lot. This is not groundbreaking literature by any means. It's not, it's the best thing in the world, but it's fun. It's interesting. It's a wild ride, but it's almost like it's self-aware. It knows what it is, it goes with it, and it's just a fun time. So in this book, we follow Jess, who is going to stay with her brother Ben in Paris, and when she gets there, he is nowhere to be found. And his neighbors in his apartment building are acting kind of sketchy. I don't want to say any more about this book because it's an experience you just have to have for yourself. But I had fun with it. It was a 4-star read, and I would definitely read this one again. It has kind of restored my faith in Lucy Foley, and I am willing to try something else of hers. I don't know if I will read her entire backlist, but this has given me more faith to try again. The next book that I read this month was The Golden Couple by Sarah Pekkanen and Greer Hendricks. And in this one, this is supposed to be a thriller, okay? But it reads more like a family drama. And it's like, it has some thrillery things that start happening in like the last, like maybe 30-35%. But before that, it's more dramatic than mysterious, in my opinion. Somebody else may read this and very well feel this is a very clear thriller, but I didn't get those vibes. In this book, we kind of follow 2 main characters, Marissa and Avery. And Avery is this therapist that has this interesting new technique where she says that she can apparently solve any problem in just 10 sessions. And she even has names for every single session, like confession, revelation, so on and so on. And so every session is supposed to be like a different stage of the grieving process almost. And it's supposed to like fix any issue. And Marissa has gone to Avery with her husband, Matthew, because she has had an affair and she wants to work on the relationship. She wants to fix it. And Avery's technique is kind of butt-insky, for lack of a better word. The way that she manages her 10 session promise is she becomes very active in people's lives, like beyond what you would normally find in a therapist's office. It's more than just walking in and talking for an hour. It's like she has free reign to like look up things in their lives, people that they're connected to. She'll randomly show up to their places of work without telling them because she wants to see what they are like when they don't know that they're being observed, when they don't know when they are being on their best behavior for a stranger, because anybody can act like everything's good when they know somebody's around. So this is more to catch them off guard, see them more as to how they really are so that she can more accurately help them. I thought that that was a very interesting premise, and if it had stuck with that alone, I probably would have liked this a little bit better. But for me, I felt like this was kind of slow. It was kind of draggy, and I wasn't crazy about it. I didn't hate it. Like, I had no problem just reading it through. I probably would have DNF'd it, honestly, if it hadn't been for a vlog, but it was more like I just wasn't particularly interested, but it's not like it was badly written or anything. I just felt like there were certain aspects of this that could have been a little bit better. I felt like it should have focused more on like Avery observing them and like her side of it. I was very interested in her story and like how the operation worked and how she could pull this off. And I didn't feel like we had enough of that. So I felt like there should have been more of that in this book. And it really focused more heavily on the family drama with the couple that has gone through this infidelity. It just wasn't my cup of tea. But I don't think it was like necessarily bad. If you read the vlog, if you watch the vlog, you will get a more accurate view of the way that I felt about this book, because I did talk about it in depth, probably more than I should have. And that's why I didn't put a full review up for it, because I basically said everything that I needed to say in that vlog. So go and watch that. But I did feel this was the weakest of Greer, Hendricks, and Sarah Pekkanen's work. It did not stack up very well against the other three, and I probably would not read it again, but I may read more from them in the future. So it's like it didn't turn me off of them and completely. It's just, it wasn't my cup of tea, and that's okay. That happens sometimes. Okay, and next up is something that I am very excited to talk about, and this is 3 books of a series. And I had previously started this series probably 4, maybe 5 years ago. It's been a long time. And I remember I had read the first 2 books back then, and I really enjoyed the first 2 books. And then for whatever reason, I didn't keep reading for a while. It took me a long time to read the next book, like 2 years. And I remember I didn't like the book at that point because I felt like it was long and dragging, and it felt like filler, and it had characters in it that I didn't know who they were, and it was just messing with my head an awful, awful lot. And that problem continued again when I read book 4. And that again was like 2 years later. So I came to the conclusion that this was not a book problem. This was a me problem, because I was reading these books so far apart, and I was not retaining all of the information. And it was particularly challenging because these books get increasingly larger the further into the series that you get. So I felt like it was something that I potentially screwed up on. So I decided to go back to the very beginning and read the books from book 1 and read them closer together, and see if I still had those same opinions or if I was right and it was just a timing issue of how long I was taking to read them. And I am talking, of course, about the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. I read The Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, and the novella prequels, The Assassin's Blade. I had seen in a couple of different places that it was recommended to read The Assassin's Blade after these two, but before Heir of Fire. And that was another thing that I did not do initially. When I was reading, I had planned on reading Assassin's Blade at the end. And I'm thinking maybe that is where I had some of my issues. And this time I read it after I was done with Crown of Midnight. And I had so much fun reading these 3 books. It was just such a good time. So many good memories, like so much feel good, heartwarming things for me. And yes, in my initial read through, I did enjoy the first 2 books, and I remember that. So this isn't that surprising, because the true test will be when I read Heir of Fire. But considering that I read these 3 books all this month, it was extremely satisfying to me, and I did really like The Assassin's Blade a lot. I like how it tied into these 2 books, which, yeah, it did. Like, events that were discussed in them, like here and there, is like an offshoot, would pop up in these novellas, and I thought that that was really interesting. I'm thinking that it is probably going to have information that is relevant to the rest of the series, and that's why it was recommended to read it before Heir of Fire. So I think that will help my reading experience with the rest of them. And for those of you that do not know, the Throne of Glass series is based around Celaena Sardothien, who is a female assassin, and she had ended up imprisoned in the salt mines of this kingdom of, what's the name of it again? And one day the king sends to have her pulled out of the salt mines, and he gives her a proposition. He is running a contest where, like, all these people, all these royal people and adversaries are throwing this contest where they each, like, sponsor a different assassin, and they have to basically, like, fight to the death to be the king's champion. The last person standing is the king's champion, and, like, they have their past crimes, like, forgiven, and the deal is they're contracted to work for him and take care of people that he wants taken care of for a set amount of time. And that he has chosen Celaena to represent, well, the crown princess, the king hasn't. The prince wants to represent Celaena and have her work as his champion. So that is the setup for book 1, and the rest of the series pretty much follows what happens after that contest. It was very well written. It's so much fun. I love the characters to death. I love Celaena's character, because she is so complex. She definitely is not perfect. She's very flawed, but she has, like, these great character traits at the same time. She's sassy. She is a smart ass, but she also has a heart of gold. Like, she doesn't want to go after people that she doesn't feel like don't deserve it. So it does lead to conflicts, because it's like she has no problems taking care of bad people, but if it's somebody she feels isn't innocent, then she tries to find a way around it. So she's not all bad, despite what her profession is. And I know I've said recently in a video of tropes that I hate, one of the tropes that I hate is love triangles, and there is a love triangle in this series. I didn't feel like it took over the entire story, though, so I kind of let it slide. It doesn't bother me as much as in other books that I've read, but I hope that it doesn't get more dramatic as time goes on. So far, it's not really bothering me, but I could see in a book series that is like 8 books long, how it could very easily turn into a problem. So I really hope that doesn't happen, because as of right now, I'm enjoying the dynamic between all of the characters. I like their relationships. I like their individual voices. I like the kingdom and the lore, and just the way that everything's set up. I think that Sarah J. Maas's writing style is very interesting and very endearing, and I cannot wait to continue on with this series. I seriously hope that it keeps on with the momentum that it has now, and it just keeps me smiling, because so far I really, really like them. The next book that I read this month was The Haunting of Maddy Clare by Simone St. James. If you guys have been following me for a little bit, you know that I recently discovered Simone St. James like a couple of months back with the Sundown Motel, and I loved that book. I loved everything about it. I was kind of let down when I read the Book of Cold Cases. I did not necessarily think that it was a bad book, but it wasn't what I expected it to be, and I think that was part of why I didn't really enjoy that experience as much. It was still a good book. It just wasn't what I thought that it was, and it kind of tainted the experience. This one, though, oh my gosh, it is right up there with the Sundown Motel. Like, you could argue even potentially that this is a little bit higher. Like, right now, I'm not even sure which one I prefer. It's probably going to depend on my mood. It's going to depend on, you know, what I'm looking for at a particular moment. But right now, they're kind of neck and neck. So in The Haunting of Maddy Clare, we primarily follow a woman named Sarah Piper, and this takes place in 1922, so let's keep that in mind. She's telling us about this incident in 1922 when she works for a temporary agency, and she is sent to meet with this man who is an author, and he is looking for an assistant. And she's thinking, oh, I'm just going to take on like a secretarial duty. I'm going to be taking some notes. It's no big deal. And what he writes is not your typical books. It's paranormal investigative books. And he investigates these homes. He investigates all of these locations and writes about them. So it's like his books are more studies on the paranormal. And in this particular instance, he is specifically asking for a woman assistant because the ghost that he has been hired to look into and to get rid of does not like men. So they are assuming that it's either going to go crazy or it's not going to show itself at all. So in order to get an accurate reading on everything, they need a woman. And she doesn't know what she's doing, and she doesn't even really believe in this stuff at first. But right off the bat, when she goes to investigate, things start to happen, and this thing has latched itself onto her. And this book is just so good. The haunting scenes are so eerie. They're so creepy. You feel like you're right there in it. But at the same time, it's not overrun. So this isn't like a jump scare type of book where you're sitting there expecting something to happen on every page and you're on edge and like you're clenching. So if you're somebody that struggles with the paranormal books or supernatural, this might be a good one for you because it gives you a bit of a break in between the instances, and you kind of know when the instances are coming. So if they're going to the house or they're going to the barn, which she primarily stays in a barn, you know something's going to happen then. So it's like you can kind of mentally prepare for it. But when they're just back at like their hotel or whatever, it's not scary. It's just them like going back over their notes and listening to recordings and things like that. So it kind of gives you a chance to step back and breathe because you more so know when something is going to happen. You might not know how it's going to happen, but you know when it will, and you can prepare a little bit for it. And another thing that I like about this book is it has a quality that you don't see all too often anymore. This is a very simple book. And when I say simple, I do not mean bad. I just mean it's very easy to follow. It doesn't have time jumps. It's all in 1922. We're not seeing multiple POVs. It's all from this character's point of view. And so it's like we see the world as she sees it. We know when things are going to happen. It has a simple formula, but it works. It is still a very intriguing story. It still has very good imagery, great atmosphere. The characters were well-rounded and interesting. There's a character in this I'm supposed to like that I never really got on board with. I kind of started to like him towards the end, but not so much like when she started to like him. But it's, that's one of those things where it's like I was so invested in the story, and I read it in entirely one sitting. So it made it wasn't until I was done with it that I was like, oh my God, that was a very, very simple formula. The way that it was all in one timeline and it was all from one point of view. And there wasn't a whole lot of characters. I mean, we had characters, but there wasn't a whole lot, like that we knew when a haunting was coming. And it's, despite all those things, it was still very intriguing, and it still had me hooked. So it made me smile. It gave me a lot of faith that this simple type of thing can still work. And it kind of made me hungry for the days when that happened more often. So, yes, I am really, really enjoying Simone St. James. I want to read her entire backlist very soon. But this just made me smile. I enjoyed it so much, and I'm going to be doing a full review for it. That I read this month was Gallows Hill by Darcy Coates. Darcy Coates is another one of those authors that I discovered this year, and I have just fallen in love with her. She is definitely horror. Up until this book, though, I considered her to be very cozy horror. This one, I felt like definitely increased the creep factor. It definitely was more... It was more creepy. It was more intense. It was a little bit more gory, but it was such a good story. So in Gallows Hill, we follow Margot, who has been notified that her parents passed away of a heart attack, and she is going back to the family home to settle their affairs. And what you need to know about Margot is she was sent away to live with her grandmother at age 8, and she never heard from her parents again. So she is dealing with a lot of resentment. She's dealing with a lot of self-hate. She is dealing with, why did they not want me? And why do I have to deal with all of this stuff now when they didn't even bother to keep me around? And they also have a business, which is a winery off of their property. So it's like she's in charge of the fate of like all of these employees, all these people. And she's trying to like figure out why she was sent off, why they didn't want her, why all of these things happen. And then all this creepy stuff starts happening in the house. And it's framed in a way where it's not obvious right away if it's supernatural, if it's her hallucinating, or if it is townspeople messing with her because she's like the new boss, and her decisions are going to decide whether or not they have a job or whatever. So it's very unclear at first because it takes a while for her to actually see anything, but there's definitely things that are happening. Like the first night that she spends there, she walks out onto her porch the next morning and there are literally nooses hanging on the porch. So it's like she's thinking someone is trying to intimidate her and scare her off. So it's like, I liked the way that it was written because it's like, you're not sure if there is a real life cause for this or not. And I liked that because it is very different from the way that Darcy Coates' writing typically is. And, I just found it very, very intriguing, and I was in it, and when the scary stuff happened, it was just very, very spooky. It just continuously got more and more intense. It was so creepy. It was so good, and it's probably right up there with The Haunting of Ashburn House as my favorite Darcy Coates. It was so incredibly good. And I have a review coming for that next week as well. And the last book that I want to talk about is a book that I have not finished yet. And at this point, I don't know if I will finish. And that is The Last Letter from Your Lover by Jojo Moyes. I said when I hauled this that the reason that I decided to pick this was because I saw the movie on Netflix, and I didn't even realize until the movie was finished that it was based on a book, or I wouldn't have even watched the movie. That's kind of a personal rule for me. But I saw it in the credits and I was like, oh crap, that was based on a book. But I loved the movie. I loved it. So I was like, I have to read the book now. I just have to. And I'm not liking it. It's the exact same story, but it's the way that it's laid out in here. I just don't care. I don't have any sympathy for this main character, and I don't have an attachment to anybody. It's slow, it's drawn out, it is kind of like, we haven't even gotten into anything in the present day, and at this point, I don't know if we're going to. But like in the movie, it bounced back and forth between the 1960s and the present day. And the present day is investigating these letters that were written in the 60s and like the people that they're about. And so far, it's just been the 60s. It's just been this woman who has amnesia. And it kind of looks like she's trying to discover it herself. And I don't know, like, I might finish this after the start of the year. I have a lot on my plate for next month, and it's all Christmas stuff, so I don't know if I'm going to get to this. But I started this at the beginning of the month, and I just kept putting it down in favor of everything else that I was reading, and I'm still barely 100 pages into this, so I'm just not enjoying it. And I'm very disappointed because the storyline is very intriguing. Or I wouldn't have wanted to pick this up in the first place. Like, I was hooked on that movie. And the book is usually better. So I was just like, if I like the movie that much, I'm going to love this book. And that just has not been the case. I'm hoping that it picks up, but I don't have immediate plans to finish this. I'm definitely prioritizing the books on my TBR first. And then if I have time, I might go back to this. But at this point, this might be a DNF. I really don't know. But I'll keep you updated on it, but that's just how I'm feeling as of right now. Alright, so that is all that I have for you guys today. If you liked this video, please make sure to comment, subscribe, like, comment, follow me on the social medias, click that bell if you want to be notified of all of my upcoming videos, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!